This episode of the Commercial Real Estate Investor Podcast is brought to you by my CRE Accelerator Mastermind, where you'll get access to my step-by-step investment blueprint, essentially a library of resources on how to invest in commercial real estate. You'll get connected to a supportive community of other commercial real estate investors that are doing projects just like you. You'll get personalized coaching and feedback from me every step of the way. Go to www.crecentral.com to learn more. Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Investor Podcast, live from the Cobble Group Studios here in Nashville, Tennessee, back for another round of office hours. You guys have questions on commercial real estate, I am here to answer them, at least to the best of my ability. We'll dive into whatever you have going on today. And one thing that I wanted to kick this discussion off with, we won't be diving into tariffs, considering how controversial last week's conversation ended up being, which I'm kind of surprised by. Because it's just economics and facts. But I wanted to start off with the question of the day. This is something that I asked my CRE Accelerator Mastermind last night to provoke our discussion for our group call. And that question of the day is, what's a misconception that you had about commercial real estate that you have since unlearned? What's a misconception about commercial real estate that you have since unlearned? To drop that into the chat, and I am going to share that. Oh, apparently it was already in the chat. I think that this is a pretty interesting question because we got some really interesting responses last night that I think are worth discussing. The first one came from Tim. He said, I used to think that making money in real estate was as simple as making your rent income exceed your expenses. I think we all kind of get caught in that trap. Now I can see there are so many other levers that you can pull to make a project more viable, like unique financing structures, increasing the value of the building through expense reduction or income increases, and different lease structures to maximize the value of a building. The great thing about commercial real estate is that it is three-dimensional, right? It is not just a 1 + 1 = 2. We're talking about, all sorts of different complexities that can be added, different layers that can be added into any single deal. So just because a deal doesn't work based off of a 1 + 1 = 2 metric doesn't necessarily mean it's not a good deal. There's so many other different levers that you can pull and get creative with it, which I think is really fun. So that's a pretty great takeaway from Tim. Chris said that commercial real estate investing is passive. Look, it's no secret. Everybody in real estate loves to talk about how passive of an investment that real estate in general can be. And can real estate be passive? Yes. I mean, if you set it up the right way, but it's not 100% passive. I mean, no investment truly is, at least not one that you're going to have control over like this. And there's always going to be some factor of work that you're going to have to put in when you're getting started or when you're looking to sell or at some point throughout the project, right? It's not like you can just buy a building and stay completely hands-off forever. There's always going to have to be some level of work to do. And that's pretty much what Chris was talking about. Here he said, in my experience, it's not truly passive, at least not at first. The more time I put into building strong systems, the easier it gets to manage, but it's definitely not set it and forget it. Keeping vacancy low and properties well maintained takes ongoing effort year round. I love that. Put the effort into building systems. Commercial real estate investing is as much of a business venture as anything else, right? Are you treating your commercial real estate properties like a business? Do you have a business plan? Are you executing your strategy to that business plan? Are you managing the metrics? And are you reporting that, even if it's just to yourself or to your spouse or to your friends? Are you reporting that on a monthly and quarterly basis so that you have somebody to hold you accountable for what you are doing, right? Commercial real estate is as much of a business as anything else. Your product just happens to be space that you're renting out to other people, right? So treat it like that. Scott is jumping in. He's saying, don't be scared by the bigger numbers, but trust, but verify more. So especially so with bigger numbers. Yeah, trust, but verify. I agree. Look, bigger numbers shouldn't scare you, especially when it comes to commercial property, because you can generally go out and find an investor or partners or get creative with the deal structure. And the bigger of a deal that you do, the bigger of a deal that you work on, honestly, the less risk you're probably going to have, because chances are good you're going to have more tenants. You're going to have a more attractive space for tenants to want to go lease, which means that your vacancy risk will be lower. Your rental income risk, whenever a tenant does vacate, will be lower. It's going to take more tenants to leave before you actually start to notice a big hit to your bottom line. Not saying that, one tenant moving out is obviously not going to hit your bottom line. It will, but it's not the same as a single tenant deal with a tenant moving out, and now you have 0% income. MXER is saying single family value add flips versus commercial value add flips. I've done 10 single family flips and looking to take that next step towards a better opportunity. Yeah, I mean, we it's probably motocrosser. I see he's got the motorcycle in his picture. So motocrosser, I would say commercial flips are great, man. I mean, there's a lot of value that can be added. We're actually literally, as soon as I jump off this live stream, I'm going in here and we're recording a new video. It will be coming out on the channel here pretty soon, and I'm going to be giving an example of a hypothetical situation as to why I think commercial real estate is so powerful. And it's, high level. You buy a 5,000 square foot building for $500,000, right? It's a 5-tenant property, and 3 out of the 5 spaces are already occupied. So you have 2 vacant. So you spend $100,000 fixing that building up, right? So now you're all in at $600,000. But you get a new facade, you get a new parking lot, you get new landscaping, new lighting, you fix up the 2 vacant units, and you lease them out. And if you're able to get, I think it's $11 a foot net on that, which is not a lot. That gives you an NOI of $55,000 a year. At an 8% cap rate, the property is now valued at $687,500. You've created $87,500 in equity just by fixing the building up and signing a couple of leases. That's why I think commercial real estate is so powerful, especially compared to residential. You can't really flip a residential unit like that. So certainly worth keeping in mind. Rich, what's going on, man? He's saying if you're buying a commercial real estate property by the pound and one of the tenants vacated while under contract, would you ask the seller to cover the lease amount until you could get it leased? That's a great question. If you are buying a commercial property based on the cap rate, right, which means that you're buying it based on the net operating income that that asset produces, and one of the tenants leaves while you're under contract, that means that the property is no longer producing as much income as you had, agreed to a purchase price on when you put it under contract. Now the property is worth less, in my opinion. So there are multiple ways to handle that, Rich. Yes, I would say like having the seller cover that lease amount is one way to do it. They could give you a discount on the purchase price. You guys agree to whatever portion of the value of the purchase price that one lease was, and you discount it by that much. I typically have something in my purchase and sale agreements that states if a tenant moves out or stops paying rent at any point while we're under contract, and the landlord is not able to replace that or collect it or whatever, then the purchase price is reduced by that amount, right? I mean, if we're agreeing that this property is worth a 7% cap rate, and all of a sudden, the net collections per year go down by $20,000, then I'm going to have a $286,000 reduction in price, because that $286,000 was in the purchase price due to the $20,000 a year that we were supposed to be netting from that one tenant. So, yeah, I mean, Rich, as far as he's saying, how would I approach that? I think I would just have an honest conversation with the landlord and say, look, we agreed that this was worth a 7% cap rate or a 7.5% cap rate. That means that with this tenant not being there anymore, it's worth X amount less. So either I need you to agree to cover, that rental rate, either through the remainder of the term. Because, I mean, Rich, the one thing that I don't know is, like, was this tenant already going to be moving out, or did this seller just disappear? The tenant disappeared because they just didn't want to run their business anymore, or whatever, right? If that's the case and there's still like 3 years remaining on the contract, then I would tell the seller, like, hey, either you discount the value of this tenant being here, or you cover that rent, right? We've got to figure something out there. If I were you, I would not be paying the full price anymore, because if you were going into it today with that tenant missing, you wouldn't put the price on it that you're probably under contract on. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I know a bunch of you guys are jumping in with more questions. One other thing that I wanted to add from the question of the day, which if you're just now joining us, the question of the day is, what is a misconception about commercial real estate that you have since unlearned? After getting into commercial real estate, it's something that you realize is not actually true. Ray said, I used to think that I could sell my own properties without a broker, and I did, but having the right sales team gets you more money and further in the long run. I like that one, not just because I have a brokerage team and we broker a lot of deals, but also because it's really true. Like, we ended up having a pretty long discussion about your time value of money. Is it worth your time to be going out and touring all of these tenants through these spaces, putting together the marketing materials, dealing with all the lease negotiations, when you could just hire somebody else to do that is probably better skilled than you, and you could focus on the highest value use of your time, which is probably finding the next deal or raising capital or networking with investors, right? It's probably not leasing commercial real estate or selling your own buildings, right? So one thing to keep in mind, I think that's pretty cool. Scott is saying, I'm back in the USA, land of opportunity. After traveling to so many different places, there is no doubt we have more opportunities in the USA than any other country in the world. Let's go 2025. I agree. I mean, the U.S. Has a lot of opportunity. I'm pretty grateful to be here. Pretty grateful for doing commercial real estate here. You know, it's interesting, just even looking at Canada, how different the commercial real estate market is. You know, they don't have the 1031 exchange, which creates a completely different dynamic when you're buying and selling properties there. It's pretty interesting how just one little piece of legislation can actually incentivize money to move through the economy a little bit more. The PAP is saying, just found out we have a cellar under our property that is a 4-inch a block flat. 4 and a block flat, but the cellar is not on anyone's deed. The cellar has been there since the 1800s, but not in use since World War II. That's pretty cool. Hey, free real estate, free space, free storage is what it sounds like. Captain Kurt, what's going on, man? Good to see you, Kurt. He's saying, what's the best way to target off-market commercial properties? That's a great question. We cover 7 different ways in the Commercial Real Estate Accelerator, my mastermind. There's 7 different primary ways for you to go about finding deals. My go-to for the lazy investor out there, which might just be the smartest investor out there, is to just network with commercial real estate brokers. They're doing every single thing on that list, and you don't have to pay them if you're buying, because they are going to get paid by the seller for their commission. So you kind of get the expertise, you get somebody else doing the work, you don't necessarily have to do it. One of my favorites, of course, is networking, right? Getting out there, meeting brokers, meeting property owners, meeting developers, whatever, wholesalers, doesn't matter, going to these real estate investment events. You'll meet a lot of people and find a lot of really good opportunities. The next thing, and this is probably top 3, maybe even top 2 on my list, is mailers. You know, we talk about that all the time on this channel, and I know that that's kind of odd to say, because I think, especially if you're coming from the residential real estate world, you're like, well, yeah, everybody sends mailers. In fact, we don't send mailers anymore because everybody sends mailers. It's not really worth our time. In commercial real estate, it's the exact opposite. Nobody sends mail. Nobody sends mailers at all. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, I own a lot of commercial property. I don't think I've ever gotten a single letter on any of my properties. I'll get those random text messages every now and then, but it's clearly like a residential wholesaler or a residential wholesaling team that is trying to just wholesale what they think is a residential property, which means that they're not pulling their data correct, right? So if you're reaching out and you're curating a list from these, from the tax records on sellers to, Target, and you're sending them mail, here's the thing: commercial real estate can be very difficult. It can be very difficult to find who is actually the true owner of these assets. So who's the decision maker? Who is that one person you actually need to speak to? Because it's typically hidden in an LLC and, whatever. The great thing about the mailers, though, is that they have to have the proper mailing address on the tax records, because that is where their taxes are sent. That is where notices from the government are sent. So if you send them a letter, it's probably at least getting to the right person who will be able to pass it on to the person that may need to see it if they need to. So that's why I like that approach. You're probably going to get a 1% response rate, right? It's pretty low. But I mean, if you think about it, how much does it cost to send out 1,000 letters? Not that much, and it might be, $600, $700. And if you get one deal out of it, that's a hell of a return right there. John is saying, Tyler, if I left my W-2, how would you go about getting loans to buy new deals? John, I would recommend you don't leave your W-2. I actually would not recommend that. Here's the thing. I don't recommend that you leave your W-2 for as long as you don't have to. Too many people get really excited about quitting their job as soon as they're making 50% in passive income is what they're making on their W-2, or even 100% of what they're making in passive income as they are on their W-2. But qualifying for a loan is infinitely more difficult without a W-2. It is significantly more difficult. By just having that W-2, I know it's a total pain in the ass, and I know everybody wants to leave that. But by having that, you have a leg up on your typical investors simply because you can qualify for the loans. What you don't want to do is quit your W-2 too early and then not be able to qualify for loans, right? Because then you can't grow your real estate portfolio anymore. So I would think through strategically what it would look like, how much income you would have to have coming in from your real estate portfolio in order to justify really cutting off the W-2. Because I know nobody wants to spend time at the 9 to 5. Obviously, that's why we all get into real estate. I can disappear tomorrow for a month if I really wanted to. I love that. But I mean, I'll tell you this, like when I first started my business back in 2018, not having a true W-2, because I was a business owner, right? You don't have a W-2. That was difficult for me. And I had a track record of success being in this business. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years before that even started counting towards, getting a loan. And nowadays it's not a problem. But typically, really what they're looking for when they're looking at investors like me is how much cash do I have, right? That's what they want to see. What's my global cash flow? How much cash am I bringing in from all of these properties? And how much cash do I have literally just sitting in a bank account? It's really frustrating when it comes to banking sometimes because, the old adage is like banks just want to give money to people that have money. I mean, it's kind of true, right? Like the more cash you have just sitting in a bank, the more money the bank is going to give you because it's less risk on them, right? It's just a pure business decision at that point. So, John, I know that this is a very long-winded answer, but I do think that a lot of people have that same question. It's like, when should I leave my W-2? How would I get loans if I don't have the W-2? And my advice to you is to stick with the W-2 for as long as you possibly can and get to at least 100% of your current W-2 income before you consider leaving. Because there are other things that you need to consider as well. It's not just the income. It's the health insurance, right? Like my insurance is unbelievably expensive because I'm, a business owner, right? I have to pay for it. It's the same as when you're a real estate investor. Like you got to pay for it. There's things that you don't necessarily think about that you now have to take on that even if you have a W-2 or a part-time W-2, something like that, that wouldn't necessarily fall on you. So I think that's a great question. Man, it's been an interesting couple of weeks here. As most of you may know, if you've been watching if you watched Office Hours last week or maybe even the week before, I've fired 4 people from my team. Unfortunately, all for cause, and that's never fun. 3 brokers and a property manager, and I'm having to step in and take over some of the leasing, some of the property management, and I haven't brokered deals for like 2 years, maybe almost 3 years, because I've had a team that's done all of that for me. I haven't managed properties in like 4 or 5 years because I've had a team that's been handling all of that for quite some time. So it's been interesting getting back in and basically resetting all of my, resetting all of my systems. It's kind of interesting because if you look at the timeline, like back when I was brokering and managing properties, I didn't have AI. I didn't have ChatGPT to help me. And now, instead of hiring back 4 people to fill those roles, I can hire back 2. And instead of hiring back, leasing brokers who I paid over $300,000 last year, I'll hire back a leasing admin, at like a $40,000 base plus a percent commission. I'll hire a property management admin at half the cost of what it would cost me to hire a good property manager. And we will utilize AI and the property management systems, and I'll step in maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. My facilities manager will pick things up a little bit more. I've probably cut my payroll by like 3/4 and will be likely more productive, which is kind of interesting. I mean, that's the impact that AI is starting to have on businesses. So I'm going to have to I'll document the journey. I'll have to do a video on it so that you guys can kind of see what I'm starting to set up, because, if we're able to start operating with half the team, then why couldn't everybody else? And the other thing that's interesting too is, we're basically creating all of these funnels online to eliminate listing brokers. Because I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, if I was going to restart this completely today, right? Like, that's kind of the nice thing about stepping back out and stepping back into it, is that I have a completely refreshed perspective on how the listing process and, leasing for those listings should be handled. And we're able to like completely reframe it. So I'm looking at it going, I don't think that we really need a bunch of different listing agents anymore. I think that you could actually have a leasing admin that handles 90% of the work, and then I handle the other 10%. And we'll get, even if we get half the volume done of what a typical leasing team would do, we're going to be far more profitable and far more efficient. And, that's kind of exciting to me. It's fun to be able to get to step back in and work on the business perspective, work on the business model, massage that all a little bit. John is saying, Tyler, going all in with brokerage and decent sub-metropolitan market, how much would one make in their first year of brokerage? Thanks for the great answers, by the way. Happy to do it, John. John, you're not going to like my answer. You could make $0, you can make $20, you can make $100,000. It completely depends. Brokerage is one of those games where it all comes down to how much you're hustling, how much you know, and who you know, right? My first year in commercial real estate brokerage, I thought I was easily going to make $100,000. I was like, man, because I was in sales before that. I was making $100,000 a year selling knives for Cutco. And so I was like, oh man, if I can make $100,000 a year selling knives, I'm definitely going to make $100,000 my first year selling commercial real estate. Not a chance. I got rocked, man. What a rude awakening. I made $40,000 my first year in commissions. And that's pure commissions, right? Like $40,000 is one thing to be making that consistently on you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. But when you're making $40,000 as a commission-only sales rep, man, like your power is getting cut. There's just going to be feast or famine. And my second year, I think I made like $40,500. Third year, though, I tripled it, made over $120,000. And then, it's just gone up every year since then. So it really takes 3 to 5 years for you to get in the groove of being a decent commercial real estate broker. And what I would encourage you to do is to just really dedicate yourself in the first 12 months. It's one of those things where you've got to go all in for 12 months. That's it. I would just say go all in for 12 months and then treat it like a 9 to 5 after that. That's fine if that's what you want to do. Some people just go all in forever and, you become Bob Knackle. But if you go all in for 12 months, you'll build the relationships, you'll get your systems down, you'll get all of the knowledge that you will need to be able to intelligently have conversations with people. I'm not saying all the knowledge that you will ever need in commercial real estate, but at least to intelligently have a conversation to where people aren't picking up the fact that you don't know what you're talking about. And you'll be a better broker for it. But it's going to take 12 months of very, very intense work. That is all we have for today. Appreciate you guys for jumping in this week's office hours. Every Tuesday morning, 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Jump in to the chat. Ask your questions. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review. Let me know what you guys think about the show. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. This episode of the Commercial Real Estate Investor Podcast is brought to you by my CRE Accelerator Mastermind, where you'll get access to my step-by-step investment blueprint, essentially a library of resources on how to invest in commercial real estate. You'll get connected to a supportive community of other commercial real estate investors that are doing projects just like you. You'll get personalized coaching and feedback from me every step of the way. Go to www.crecentral.com to learn more.